This is just a basic assembly video for Wish chassis. It applies to medium chassis and original 72mm chassis. I'm just going to go over hardware components, installation, any kind of tips that come to mind while we're doing this. So in the Wish hardware package, you get a set of 8 axles. You'll get a set of 16 sidewall spacers. The other 8 here are installed on the match to this frame. You'll get 16 nylon washers. These are used for coping mode, and that's something I definitely need to go over. Probably haven't explained it well enough, and I don't think I have a video that shows it, so that's what this one's for. And then you also get 2 sets of UFS fasteners. You get a 16mm and a 12mm length of UFS fasteners. UFS fasteners are M6 by 1 thread. 16mm length will fit the rear of any raised heel boot. Works good on flat boots that have a thick mounting distance between the foot and the sole plate. And the 12mm length are good for the front of raised heel boots and other things like Razor Shift or Razor's SL that have a really thin sort of sole plate, base plate mounting system. So let's look first at installing the sidewall spacers. So it just kind of varies according to the tolerance as to how frustrating this might be or how much effort it might take you to install these. What I like to do is I just grab one, sort of get my thumb to push it in place, and I grab an axle, and what I do with that axle is just kind of work the axle around while I push really hard, and sometimes they go into place pretty nicely. It's a tight fit, and just tolerances can vary, so sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier to get them in. When you're having trouble to get these in, you have to do a bit of a press fit. I have another video that sort of shows that in entirety, but we'll look at doing one here. So this one was a little bit harder to get in. You can see I can't quite push it all the way in. So this one we'll do a little press fit on, see what happens with some of the others. That one was pretty good. And sometimes the outer frame spacers, you can get them in most of the way. If you don't get them in all the way, once you install the wheel and tighten the axle hardware down, it'll help seat them all the way. So we'll do a little press fit work here on that one. Okay, so let's look at doing a press fit on these spacers here. You don't need any special equipment. You just need a wheel with bearings installed. We need 2 Allen wrenches. We need an axle, which comes in that hardware package. And we'll use one of these UFS fasteners because it makes the job pretty easy. So first thing is we'll take the axle, put it through the bearings, where we have already pressed in this spacer by hand a little bit. We'll just go ahead and put the axle through it on the inside here. Then we'll take the fastener, we'll get it in here, just hold it in place, and then we grab an Allen wrench, dial in the fastener, spin it to the left a little bit till it gets in place, and then you can start tightening it down. Now, sometimes you don't need the extra Allen wrench to press fit this all the way in, so this one I didn't need it. So that was a quick job doing that one. We'll go ahead and actually push this spacer out. This is just a method that can help make this a little bit easier. So we'll take the spacer, we'll grab this, make sure we have it the right way to press in. We're going to press it into this hole right here. So what I'll do is just hold this in place lightly, get my Allen wrench in there. I kind of push on here so it helps make the spacer seat into the hole that's there. Then I will grab the axle and the wheel, you just give this a turn to the left, and that fastener should thread really easily into the axle. Then it'll kind of center and get itself into the spacer, and then we can actually just tighten this up. So we'll grab both wrenches, and then we can tighten this up and get it to seat nicely. Now that we're done with installing the frame spacers, then we can install the chassis to the boot. So all the versions of the Wish chassis require wheel recess. So we have templates on the website that you can use to modify. You can make a wheel recess that accommodates the 72 millimeter chassis, the 269 millimeter medium, or the 257 millimeter medium chassis, or you can make it so it accommodates all of them. Some people's work on making these wheel wells is a lot better than mine. Some skates come with wheel wells. Them skates have wheel wells, should fit up to 65 millimeter on any boot. Medium boot will fit up to 68 millimeter on the medium chassis, 72 millimeter on the large. Actually, some of the Razor's boots have a wheel well, and we were able to put on the 257 millimeter wheelbase medium chassis with 65 millimeter wheels outer. We didn't have to modify the sole plate at all; they just fit. So there's a lot of boots out there. Symmetric sole plates as well will work. A lot of boots that already accommodate that recess. Some don't, so you have to do some modification work. So that's the first thing you need to do before you install it to the boot. You got to modify your sole plate. Now that we've done that, we're just going to line this up here. We're going to put our chassis on top. And this is a really important point that I want to make. These UFS fasteners are very specific. They have a very specific head geometry. It's called a button flange head. It's an international standard. It's similar to the old Solomon style that used to come with Solomon and Shadow frames when they started using UFS. This is very important because it distributes the weight and the forces through the chassis, through the mount here. If you don't use these, it can lead to cracking. So if you use something that doesn't have this size flange on it to distribute the force, something smaller, you probably get some cracking if you're using it, heavy use. And then if you use any UFS fasteners that are larger and don't actually fit into this counter bore that's designed, you can see how low that fits in there. You can also have some issues. So, these come with every hardware pack, and that's why they come with every hardware pack. They're very specific. Hopefully, we'll see them used more and more on some other frames. But for these, definitely use these. These can also be used for the coping mode, which I'll demonstrate a little bit later. But for mounting to the boot, you definitely want to use these that come in the hardware package. When you're installing this, it just helps generally on any boot. You just install them a little bit at a time once you get them threaded. Tighten it up slowly in the back and then the front, the back again. Just do a little bit and a little bit, and it helps give everything a little bit extra time to get seated as you're tightening this up all the way. Once you get it in there snug, you start feeling some resistance on both of these, then you can tighten them up the rest of the way. Make sure you got a good, tight, solid fit. All right, next step is install the wheels. We're going to use a setup of 65/58. Let's just get these in here. Try to keep that in the camera. Make sure we get the wheels aligned. Okay, so this is where you'd install the nylon washers for the coping mode. And you can install them. You can either use the UFS bolts for coping mode, or you can use the axle head. We're going to install it using these normal axle heads. So what you want to do is take the female side of the axle and put that on the inside of the chassis, on the negative side. Okay, so now that we have that, now we can install the male side of the axle fastener, but what we're going to do for coping mode is we're going to use these nylon washers to space the head out. You shouldn't use these nylon washers for anything except coping mode. That's all they're intended for. They're not structurally sound to be used as a normal washer. They don't need to go anywhere else to create any more space or to support any kind of fastener. They're only here just to be used for coping mode. So we'll install these. You put 2 at each axle. They'll only fit on the male side of the axle. That ensures that the female side of the axle makes it all the way through from one spacer to the other. That makes sure that it's in double shear so that it can withstand all the impact forces from jumping. And we get these in here. So we're just using 2 of the nylon washers underneath each one of these axle heads. And then we can see what it does is it just spaces this out a little bit past the frame sidewall. And that way, if you're skating coping, this will touch first instead of the plastic. And once you wear off this surface on the fastener, it'll slide a little bit better. Also makes really cool noise. An alternative that you can do is instead of installing 2 of the nylon washers at each axle, you can install 3 just on the outer 2 axles, and that'll space this out a little bit further. You can create 2 points of contact that would touch the coping, and if we have the same amount of force and less points of contact, we generally get a little bit better sliding action. So putting 3 under there would space it out a little bit more. So that takes care of the assembly for one boot. One more to go. If anyone has any questions, you can message us on Instagram, go to our website, fill out the contact phone. Facebook also works. Happy to help with any troubleshooting you might have, any comments, opinions, or other. Always looking to improve. So one thing that we are going to do next time we actually make a run of axle hardware, which might be a while. We ordered a lot. The reason that these need a press fit occasionally is due to this really sharp edge here on the spacer. And it sort of digs into the plastic a little bit when we're trying to install it. So I've researched this to figure out what's going on, and what we're going to do next time is we'll put a chamfer right here, and that actually makes it able to be pushed in by hand. It's still a tight fit, but you can push it in by hand just because you're not getting any kind of grabbing action from this really sharp lip right here. So that'll be coming in the future. It might be a while. We have to order a lot of axle hardware all at once every time we make these, but definitely trying to make things better as we move forward. Again, if you have any questions, just let us know. Thanks.